So what does Nixon, Gleason, and aliens have to do with the story, you ask? Well, it's a story that sounds too crazy to be true, but could it also be too wild to have been made up? Let's try and find out what actually happened.
In 1973, Jackie Gleason came home pale and shaking. President Nixon had just shown him something at a secret Miami base. Gleason told his wife, then swore her to silence. He couldn't sleep for days. For decades, no photos existed of this night. But one picture survived, hidden in a private collection. It shows Gleason and Nixon leaving the facility. Their faces tell the whole story. America's funniest man had just seen something that wasn't funny at all. Jackie Gleason was born on February 26, 1916, in a small Brooklyn apartment at 364 Chauncey Street. That address wasn't just his birthplace. It later became the fictional home of Ralph Cramden on The Honeymooners. The building was cramped, old, and loud. But it was real life. Gleason didn't need to invent stories. He lived them. And when he brought those stories to TV, audiences thought they were watching a funny character. What they didn't realize was that Gleason was just playing himself. When he was only 3, Jackie lost his older brother Clement. Meningitis took him. Clement was just 14. It shattered the family. Jackie was no longer a little brother. He was now an only child, surrounded by silence and sadness. He remembered Clement for his beautiful handwriting, a quiet, strange detail that stuck with him for life. Jackie's father, Herbert, worked at the kitchen table each night, writing insurance papers. Jackie loved watching him write. His father's handwriting was sharp and smooth, a kind of art. Jackie never forgot that, but admiration turned to heartbreak. In 1925, when Jackie was 9, his father did something that scarred him forever. He burned every photo that had his face in it. Then, the next day, he left. Just walked out the door and never came back. No letters, no visits, nothing. One night, Jackie had a father. The next, he didn't. He was erased like he never existed. After that, Jackie's mother May had no choice. She took a job in a subway booth. Long hours, harsh conditions. And all the while, Jackie was on his own. Brooklyn in the 1920s wasn't gentle. It taught him how to survive. He hustled pool. He joined street gangs. He learned how to talk fast, act bold, and protect himself. But he also learned how to make people laugh. That became his weapon, and eventually, his way out. One day at school, he got up on stage for a play. He said a few lines. The audience laughed. Something clicked. He felt alive in a way he never had. He knew this was it. School didn't matter anymore. Books couldn't feed his family, but a stage might. At just 14, he dropped out and went all in. He started as an MC in a Brooklyn theater. $4 a night. That's about $97 today. Not much, but it was something. He didn't stop there. He worked at the Majestic, the Central, the Folly, the Halsey. Sometimes he even crossed into New Jersey to perform at Club Miami and Empire Burlesque. He'd take public transport, rush from one show to another, sometimes doing 3 in a single night. He was still a teenager, but he worked like a man chasing something he couldn't name. He tried everything: carnival barker, stunt driver, nightclub comic. He wasn't picky. If it paid, he did it. He bombed plenty of times, especially in stand-up. But he didn't quit. Instead, he adapted. He worked the room, talked directly to tables, found a rhythm. He turned failure into stage time, and stage time into experience. His act sharpened. His confidence grew. But just as things were starting to look up, life knocked him down again. In 1935, his mother developed a carbuncle on her neck. They didn't have money for a doctor, so Jackie desperate and naive, tried to lance it himself. But it went terribly wrong. She died from sepsis, and Jackie blamed himself. He was left with no family, no home, and just 36 cents in his pocket. His girlfriend's family offered to take him in, but Jackie, stubborn as ever, said no. He wasn't going to live off anyone's pity. He told them he'd make it on his own and walked away. That choice probably ended the relationship, but it set the tone for how Jackie would live. Hard, fast, and without asking for favors. A friend named Birch let him stay for a while and got him in touch with a booking agent. Jackie landed a one-week comedy gig in Reading, Pennsylvania for $19. It doesn't sound like much now, but back then it was just enough to survive. The agent even paid for Jackie's bus ticket up front. It was Jackie's first real comedy job, and it sparked a chain of events that changed his life. At first, he played in rough, low-end bars. Comics called them buckets of blood, places where if you insulted the wrong guy, you might get punched in the face. But Jackie didn't back down. He got sharper, louder, and meaner. By 1940, he made it to Club 18 in Manhattan. This place was different. Rich people came there to be insulted. Literally. They wanted it. When a spotlight hit a celebrity walking in, it meant one thing: target locked. Jackie was like a shark in a tank full of fish. He went straight for them. When famous ice skater Sonia Henney showed up, Jackie handed her an ice cube and said, "Okay, now do something." Cold, direct, and hilarious. That kind of brutal timing made Jackie a star in that room. And then, everything changed. One night in 1940, Jack Warner, the boss of Warner Brothers, showed up. The spotlight hit him, and Jackie didn't hold back. He roasted Warner like he was just another guest. Most people would have been terrified to insult a Hollywood kingmaker, but not Jackie. Warner loved it. A few days later, he offered Jackie a film contract, $250 a week. That's around $4,700 a week in today's money. Just 5 years earlier, Jackie had been broke and sleeping on couches. Now he was going to Hollywood. By 1941, Jackie was in films. He worked alongside Ann Sheridan and Humphrey Bogart. He played a bassist in Orchestra Wives. The roles weren't huge, but they got his foot in the door. While most of the country was struggling through war and recovery, Jackie was cashing steady studio checks. But success didn't tame him. If anything, it turned up the volume. His parties were wild. One hotel had to soundproof his room because the noise was too much for the other guests. He'd drink all night with comedians, musicians, and anyone who could keep up. He was generous, always paying for everyone's drinks, but it left him broke more than once. In one crazy moment, Jackie was months behind on rent at a lakeside boarding house. So, he put on swim trunks, walked past the landlady like he was going for a swim, then ran back, grabbed his bags he'd tossed from a window, and vanished. Years later, he came back to pay what he owed. The landlady cried. She thought he had drowned. Jackie's personal life was just as chaotic. In 1935, he met dancer Genevieve Halford. She wanted a serious relationship. Jackie wanted to avoid marriage. So, Genevieve played her cards. She told Jackie that if he wouldn't commit, she'd date other men. When he didn't budge, she followed through. One night in 1936, Jackie was doing a show in Newark. He looked out at the crowd and saw her sitting with another guy. Front row, impossible to miss. It hit him hard. The second his act was over, he walked straight to their table and proposed. Right then, right in front of her date. They got married on September 20th, 1936. But marriage didn't slow Jackie down. He still lived like a man who couldn't sleep. He worked late, partied hard, and never really gave Genevieve the quiet life she wanted. They separated in 1941, got back together in 1948, then split again in 1951. Somehow, the marriage dragged on for 33 years until they finally divorced in 1970. Jackie Gleason didn't arrive in Hollywood with a bang. His film debut came in Navy Blues in 1941. He was credited as Jackie C. Gleason, but the role was small and easy to miss. He stood beside stars like Ann Sheridan and Martha Raye, but his comedy, what he was best at, was barely used. Over the next few years, he appeared in more films, even with legends like Humphrey Bogart and Edward G. Robinson. Still, nothing stuck. He wasn't breaking through. By 1944, he was 28 and had a foot in the door, but that door wasn't opening wide. So, while Hollywood stalled him, Gleason started building something else, his name on the nightclub circuit. He mixed jokes with music, and people loved it. In 1942, he and Lou Parker hit the road with Hell's a Poppin', a loud, chaotic stage show. Gleason was loud too, on stage and off. And finally, he hit it big, but not on screen. It was Broadway that gave him his first true shot in Follow the Girls in 1944. At the same time, World War II was roaring. In 1943, Gleason showed up for his military draft exam. Many actors were going off to war: Clark Gable, Jimmy Stewart, and others. Gleason didn't join them. The doctors gave him a 4F classification. That meant he was unfit for service. No boot camp, no battlefield. Instead, he stayed behind, working in clubs and on stage. He performed at Maxie Rosenblum's nightclub in Los Angeles and kept trying to climb the film ladder. The war years were strange for him. While others were in uniform, Gleason was juggling gigs and trying to keep his family together. He had 2 daughters, and his marriage was falling apart. He partied hard, so hard that his hotel had to soundproof his suite to keep the noise from waking other guests. It wasn't just music that was loud. Gleason's whole life was. He also had a strange relationship with money. He didn't save it. He didn't believe in saving it. When he made $80 a week at the Miami Club during the Great Depression, he spent every cent. He believed saving was for people who thought they might not make it. He always thought he'd make it. To him, real class meant picking up the check, even if the people with him made more money than he did. Real style? That meant buying drinks for an entire bar just because he felt like it. When he threw parties in his hotel room, he'd hire a live Dixieland band to play, and only serve top-shelf liquor. He'd tip bartenders what they made in a week. Even when he got rich, nothing changed. In the 1970s, a reporter asked him about his massive $11 million CBS contract. Gleason shrugged and said, "I don't care about money. I didn't rob a bank. This is America." Then came February 6, 1949. Jackie Gleason walked onto The Ed Sullivan Show. The show was still new, and so was TV as a whole. Gleason's routine that night was about a man in love with a jukebox. He called it Jukey. It was silly, weird, and completely original. The audience laughed hard. Sullivan laughed too, and he noticed something others had missed. Gleason wasn't just another nightclub guy. He was a star waiting to be let loose on American homes. After that, Gleason came back again and again. By the early 1950s, he wasn't just another comedian. He was the Great One. Nobody knows who said it first, but once the name stuck, it stayed. And it fit. Gleason had a way of taking over everything around him: scripts, sets, even silence. On July 15, 1950, he became the new host of Cavalcade of Stars, a variety show on the Dumont television network. He wasn't the first. Jack Carter and Jerry Lester had tried before him, but he was the one who made it explode. Dumont was a small network with even smaller budgets. They filmed in tight spaces with shaky equipment, sponsored by drugstore ads and fueled by grit. But none of that mattered. Gleason lit up the screen. His charm filled the room. And in that cramped studio, he built a world. He invented characters like the poor soul, a sweet, clumsy man who just couldn't catch a break. Audiences loved him. And then came the night that changed everything. March 3rd, 1952. Gleason stepped onto The Ed Sullivan Show and introduced the world to Ralph Kramden for the first time. It was just a sketch, a small part of the episode. But it hit like lightning. Ralph thought his wife Alice was cheating on him, when really, she was planning a birthday surprise. That was the magic. Big emotions wrapped in confusion, all leading to laughs that felt real. That night, Gleason didn't stop at Ralph. He also brought back the poor soul and added Fenwick Babbitt, a bumbling worker who couldn't keep up with a conveyor belt. It was comedy chaos. It was also a turning point. Sullivan knew Gleason had struck something special. The Honeymooners weren't just funny. They were relatable. And people wanted more. 2 months later, on May 4th, Gleason returned to Sullivan's show with another Ralph and Alice sketch. The momentum was building, and CBS was watching. William S. Paley, the president of CBS, saw the future, and its name was Jackie Gleason. He offered him a deal too big to ignore. More money, more control, a bigger stage. Gleason said yes. On September 20th, 1952, The Jackie Gleason Show premiered on CBS. It was bold, loud, unpredictable, and pure Gleason. And it worked. The show was nominated for Best Variety Series 3 years in a row. Art Carney won Emmys in 1954 and 1955. Audrey Meadows won in 1955. Gleason never won, but he didn't need to. His name was already in lights. He had taken a sketch about a loudmouth bus driver and turned it into a legend. But behind the scenes, Gleason was a nightmare to work with. He refused to rehearse. He claimed he had a photographic memory and could nail his lines after reading the script once. Most of the time, he didn't even bother to look at it until just hours before the show. His co-stars were constantly on edge. Joyce Randolph said she'd break into cold sweats waiting for him to show up, often drunk or drinking on set. Art Carney called the experience unique, which was a nice way of saying it was chaos. But somehow, it worked. Gleason believed too much preparation would ruin the performance. And when the cameras rolled in front of a live audience of 1,000 people, something electric happened. Even if he forgot a line, he'd blame the cue cards and keep going. And that wild, unpredictable energy is exactly what made the show unforgettable. Still, not everything aged well. Ralph Kramden's most famous catchphrase, "One of these days, Alice, to the moon," was technically a threat. A pretend one, sure, but today it feels uncomfortable. Back then, audiences laughed because they knew it was all bark. Alice wasn't scared. She'd stare him down with folded arms and a sharp comeback. Gleason knew the comedy wasn't in the violence. It was in how powerless Ralph really was. Still, it's hard to imagine those lines making it onto TV today. But they became so iconic. Even Futurama parodied them. That's how deep Gleason's lines sank into pop culture. Then came the big shock. After just one season, Gleason walked away. The classic 39 episodes were all he gave the world of the Honeymooners in its original form. That was it. CBS had offered him a deal worth $11 million. That's over $75 million today. He was getting $65,000 per episode. Carney got $3,500. Meadows got $2,000. Randolph? Just $500. But Gleason didn't care about the money. He said the writing couldn't keep up with the pace. His writers had been doing long sketches for variety shows. Trying to fit that into 30-minute sitcom episodes made the material suffer. And he refused to water it down. So he ended it, just like that. But Gleason wasn't done, not even close. In 1952, he started recording music, even though he couldn't read or write it. He released 58 albums for Capitol Records by 1972. His debut, Music for Lovers Only, stayed on Billboard's top 10 for 153 weeks. That's almost 3 years. No comedian had ever done anything like it. At the same time, he had signed a $6 million deal with CBS for his show. Between 1952 and 1955 alone, he recorded 14 albums. Many hit #1. And he did it without formal training. People said it was just branding, that he barely had a hand in the music. But trumpeter Bobby Hackett swore otherwise. Hackett said Gleason could hear a single bad note in a 60-piece orchestra and know exactly where it came from. No training, just instinct. That's what made him different. In 1961, he shocked everyone again. This time, not in a good way. He launched a new game show called You're in the Picture. It was awful. Critics destroyed it. Time called it the worst show in television history. 1 week later, Gleason showed up on air, alone on stage, and said, "That show bombed so bad, it made the H-bomb look like a firecracker." It was brutal honesty, and somehow it worked. People respected him for owning it. He turned the show into a talk format for the next 7 weeks, just to finish his contract. But Gleason could do more than comedy. That same year, he starred in The Hustler as Minnesota Fats. He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He was calm, cold, and perfect. The film made $7.6 million off a $2.1 million budget. Gleason was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. It proved he could act, really act. And The Hustler became a classic, so important it was added to the National Film Registry. On May 23, 1964, Jackie Gleason ended his New York show and made a surprising move. He left CBS Studio 50 and headed to Miami Beach. That fall, his new show aired from the Miami Beach Convention Center. It was the first big TV show to broadcast from Florida. People started calling him Mr. Miami Beach. Gleason said the warm weather made work easier. The show opened with a boat racing toward shore. It always ended with Gleason shouting, "Miami Beach audiences are the greatest in the world." His move didn't just help his career, it helped the Florida economy. Tourists poured into Miami Beach, thanks to his non-stop praise. But Gleason didn't take a flight to get there. He never flew. Years earlier, he had a terrifying flight where 2 engines failed, and the plane had to land emergency style in Tulsa. After that, he swore off flying forever. So in 1964, he took a train to Miami. But not just any train. He rented a whole train and called it the Great Gleason Express. It carried his dancers, band, crew, even their furniture. It had 3 lounge cars packed with drinks. People joked the entire train was just a moving bar. CBS paid for the whole trip, but wasn't happy when stories of partying, women, and booze made the news. Gleason's personal life was just as wild. In the mid-1950s, he had a terrible fall during a sketch and broke his leg and ankle. He was taken to the hospital. But the real drama began when his wife, Genevieve, came to visit and found another woman already at his bedside. It was Marilyn Taylor, the sister of choreographer June Taylor. Gleason had been secretly dating her. Genevieve walked in on them being affectionate. That was the last straw. She filed for separation in 1954, but as a Catholic, she refused to give him a full divorce for nearly 20 years. Gleason was stuck between two women, one he couldn't leave and one he couldn't marry. Years later, Gleason built a huge mansion in Florida. It was called Gleason Manor. The house sat beside a lake in Lauderhill. It had 14 rooms and 5 bars. Yes, 5. Gleason loved drinking, and the house showed it. He also had a giant library, though people said he didn't read much. The dining room looked like a restaurant. He hosted stars like Frank Sinatra and even President Gerald Ford. There was also a pool room designed by the famous billiards player Willie Moscone, who had helped Gleason with his movie, The Hustler. After Gleason died in 1987, his wife Marilyn stayed there for a while. Then she sold it in 1992 for $450,000. By 2016, the price dropped to just $299,000. Behind the fame, Gleason had a strange obsession: UFOs. He collected tons of books about aliens. He even built a house in New York shaped like a spaceship. He called it the Mothership, and the guest house was the Scout Ship. But the most shocking story came in 1973. His wife at the time, Beverly McKittrick, said President Nixon took Gleason to a secret base in Miami. There, Nixon supposedly showed him alien bodies. Gleason told her they were small, bald, and had big ears. When he got home, he sat down pale and silent. He couldn't sleep for days. Gleason never talked about it publicly, but he did tell a UFO researcher in private. That was in 1986, just before he died. In 1977, Gleason shocked Hollywood again. He played Sheriff Buford T. Justice in Smokey and the Bandit. The movie made $127 million, even though it only cost $4.3 million to make. It was the second biggest film of the year. Gleason was 61 at the time. He was overweight and already sick. Just a year later, in 1978, he had chest pains on stage and ended up needing triple bypass surgery. Still, he did 2 more Smokey films. His angry, loud sheriff became a legend. Even as his body gave out, Gleason refused to slow down. Gleason's second marriage was a quick one. Right after he finally got divorced from Genevieve in 1970, he married Beverly McKittrick. It happened just 10 days later. She was a secretary at a country club. They had met in 1968, when Gleason was still married. The wedding was small and took place in England. But just 3 years later, everything changed. Gleason found out that Marilyn Taylor, the same woman from years ago, was now a widow and living in Miami with her son. He didn't hesitate. He filed for divorce again. Beverly tried to stop it, but she couldn't. Depending on the source, the divorce was final in late 1975. That same year, Gleason married Marilyn Taylor. It was December 16, 1975. They had known each other for over 20 years. This marriage lasted until the end. Marilyn stayed with him as his health collapsed. Gleason didn't want people to know how sick he really was. Marilyn made sure he had peace at home while he quietly battled cancer. He died on June 24, 1987, with her by his side. Gleason's weight was a constant issue. He often weighed over 300 pounds. He kept 3 sets of clothes, one for when he was 185 pounds, one for when he was 235, and one for when he was 285. He ate red meat, desserts, and rarely touched vegetables. He had a home gym, but never used it. By the mid-70s, his body began breaking down. In 1978, he was touring in a play when he got chest pains. Doctors did surgery and replaced arteries that were up to 90% blocked. They warned him to stop smoking. He had been smoking 6 packs a day since 1952. He didn't quit. In 1986, while filming his final movie, Nothing in Common, doctors found cancer in his colon and liver. He also had diabetes and painful clotted hemorrhoids. That year, he told his daughter, "I won't be around much longer." On June 24, 1987, at 10:05 p.m., Jackie Gleason took his last breath. He was in his Lauderhill, Florida mansion. Marilyn and a few close friends were with him. The death certificate said liver failure. It didn't mention the cancer that had spread through his body. Just like he had lived, he left quietly, hiding the real damage. He was buried in Miami at Our Lady of Mercy Catholic Cemetery. A bronze statue was placed over his grave. It read, "And away we go." Fans visited often. They left bus tokens and notes saying "Bang, Zoom" to honor the Honeymooners. But his daughters didn't speak at the funeral. There were no tearful stories or shared memories.